stood up and rewrote the rules of power. That is exactly what Pakistan has done with the JF-17 Thunder, a fighter jet dismissed by critics, underestimated by analysts, and ignored by skeptics, until it proved itself to be the weapon that rattled the very foundations of Western defense thinking. When Western defense experts first analyzed the JF-17 Thunder, what startled them most was not only its capability, but the price tag attached to it. For decades, the defense industry operated on a fixed assumption that combat superiority is linked directly to sky-high costs. The West had invested billions into aircraft like the F-35, Eurofighter Typhoon, or even the upgraded F-16, creating the perception that only massive budgets can produce effective air dominance. The JF-17 broke that assumption. Developed with a fraction of those budgets, it emerged as a fighter jet capable of standing against modern aerial threats while costing nearly 1/4 or even 1/5 of Western fighters. This cost-effective yet lethal design strategy was deliberate. Pakistan knew it could never afford to compete dollar for dollar with Western defense giants, so it shifted the competition to efficiency and utility. The Thunder does not pretend to be a stealth-dominated superjet, but it provides exactly what a developing country with real combat challenges needs: agility, durability, and affordability. Western analysts were surprised to see how Pakistan managed to integrate radar systems, electronic warfare capabilities, and precision strike weapons into a jet that costs between $25 to $35 million per unit, compared to Western jets that range from $80 million to over $120 million each. Maintenance and operational costs followed the same pattern. A Western fighter requires massive logistical support and sophisticated infrastructure to stay combat-ready, while the JF-17 can be serviced and deployed rapidly with far fewer resources. This gave Pakistan a warplane that could be fielded in larger numbers, sustained for longer campaigns, and upgraded without draining the national treasury. Western militaries realized this posed a new kind of challenge. If countries across Asia, Africa, or Latin America began adopting such affordable fighters, it would directly undermine the monopoly that Western defense firms enjoyed over global air power markets. The secret was not just in the engineering, but in the philosophy. Create a jet that punches above its weight, while staying within financial reach of nations that cannot afford billion-dollar defense programs. For the first time in decades, the West saw a fighter jet that redefined the balance between cost and combat effectiveness, and that reality unsettled many of their long-standing assumptions about air power. One of the most striking aspects of the JF-17 Thunder that unsettled Western defense circles was how Pakistan approached its development strategy through collaboration and self-reliance. For decades, Pakistan's Air Force depended heavily on imported jets like the F-16s, which not only came at high costs, but also with political strings attached, often limiting upgrades, restricting weapons integration, and tying operational freedom to Washington's approval. The decision to partner with China in creating the JF-17 was not merely a matter of filling the gap in Pakistan's fleet, but a bold step toward breaking free from dependency on Western suppliers. In co-developing the aircraft, Pakistan gained access to advanced aerospace engineering, design frameworks, and weapons integration systems, while simultaneously ensuring that the final product reflected its own unique security needs. This meant that instead of buying a ready-made jet designed for someone else's war doctrine, Pakistan was able to shape the JF-17 to suit its own environment, geography, and strategic priorities. Western experts had underestimated the depth of this collaboration, assuming it would produce a lower-tier aircraft with limited use, but the outcome was far more refined. The jet emerged as a symbol of indigenous capability, with Pakistan establishing local assembly lines, training engineers and technicians, and creating an ecosystem for upgrades and maintenance. This reduced vulnerability to sanctions or political pressure that often cripple countries relying exclusively on foreign defense imports. The JF-17 represented a major psychological shift, signaling to the world that Pakistan could stand independently in designing, producing, and sustaining its own air power. For Western analysts, this was an uncomfortable revelation because it proved that the monopoly of advanced defense technology was slipping out of their exclusive control. In a world where technology transfer has been tightly guarded, Pakistan's success in mastering this joint venture meant that smaller nations could bypass traditional gatekeepers of military power. This collaboration did not just produce a cost-effective fighter, but also a template for future self-reliance, where Pakistan could upgrade block by block without waiting for Western approval. That spirit of independence, embedded in the very creation of the JF-17, was what truly caught Western defense experts by surprise. The JF-17 Thunder's credibility did not come from promotional brochures or marketing campaigns, but from the unforgiving test of real combat. When Pakistan deployed the jet during the 2019 confrontation with India, the world watched closely, many expecting it to fall short against the might of the Indian Air Force's more expensive and widely recognized platforms. What happened, however, left defense experts in the West reconsidering their assumptions. The JF-17 played an active role in Pakistan's air defense operations, demonstrating that it was more than just a budget aircraft. It engaged, maneuvered, and held its own in hostile airspace, sending a clear message that this was a combat-proven machine, not a prototype waiting for validation. Western analysts had long believed that low-cost fighters could not match up in actual conflict scenarios against high-tech adversaries, but the JF-17 proved otherwise by effectively integrating with Pakistan's air defense network, launching precision-guided munitions, and showcasing its beyond visual range capabilities. The fact that it performed under pressure in a real standoff against a rival with superior numbers and Western-backed hardware marked a turning point in how it was perceived. This credibility was something money could not buy because combat effectiveness is the ultimate benchmark for any fighter aircraft. Suddenly, nations that had overlooked the JF-17 began reassessing its potential, seeing it not just as an affordable option, but as a reliable, war-tested jet that could actually deliver results. For Pakistan, the Thunder's performance was a matter of national pride, proving its engineers and pilots could rely on a domestically produced platform in the heat of conflict. For the West, it was a reminder that the monopoly on effective air power was not theirs alone, and that practical combat-ready solutions could come from nations outside the traditional defense giants. The psychological impact of the JF-17's combat debut was immense, shifting it from being viewed as a budget compromise to being respected as a legitimate frontline fighter. In the defense world, perception is as critical as performance, and the Thunder managed to establish both in a single stroke, which is why Western defense experts were left unsettled. What truly caught Western defense experts off guard about the JF-17 Thunder was Pakistan's ability to integrate advanced weapon systems into an aircraft that was originally dismissed as a lightweight fighter. Traditionally, the narrative in Western defense circles was that only expensive jets like the F-35, F-22, or even the Eurofighter Typhoon could carry cutting-edge weapons such as beyond visual range missiles, precision strike systems, and electronic warfare pods. Yet Pakistan challenged this perception by equipping the JF-17 with modern Chinese-made BVR missiles, standoff precision munitions, and air-to-ground strike capabilities that gave it a serious edge in real combat scenarios. This was not a theoretical achievement, but one that translated into operational readiness, giving Pakistani pilots the confidence to engage adversaries with long-range missiles before they were even within sight. The integration of these systems meant that the JF-17 could neutralize high-value targets and defend its airspace with lethal efficiency, despite being significantly cheaper and smaller than its Western counterparts. Western analysts were also struck by the fact that Pakistan had managed to create a modular design that allowed the jet to evolve block by block, with each new version carrying improved radars, electronic warfare systems, and weapon compatibility. This flexibility ensured that the JF-17 would not become obsolete in a few years, but would instead remain adaptable to changing battlefield requirements. What unsettled Western experts even more was the realization that Pakistan had achieved this without the kind of massive defense budgets that NATO members or superpowers spend annually, which made the Thunder a disruptive model in global defense economics. The very idea that a country outside the Western Bloc could field an aircraft capable of engaging advanced jets with modern missiles, precision bombs, and targeting systems shook long-held assumptions about air dominance. For Pakistan, this integration was a way to level the playing field against adversaries with larger air forces, ensuring that even with fewer resources, its pilots would not enter a battle disadvantaged. For the West, it was a lesson that technology was no longer confined to expensive platforms, and that effective firepower could be delivered by nations that had once been written off as dependent on outdated imports, which is why the JF-17's weapons integration became a point of strategic surprise. Another factor that shook Western defense experts about the JF-17 Thunder was its growing export potential and the global attention it started receiving. For years, the international fighter jet market has been dominated by Western and Russian manufacturers who not only sold aircraft, but also tied those sales to political influence, military cooperation, and long-term dependency for spare parts and upgrades. The JF-17 disrupted this order by emerging as an affordable yet credible alternative that appealed to countries looking for modern fighter capabilities without the financial and political strings attached to Western contracts. Nations in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East began to show serious interest because the Thunder offered something unique: combat-proven performance, low maintenance requirements, and advanced weapon integration at a fraction of the cost of an F-16 or Gripen. For countries with limited defense budgets, the choice between buying a handful of Western jets or equipping their entire air force with dozens of JF-17s was an obvious one. This potential for wide-scale adoption made Western arms manufacturers uneasy, as it directly challenged their monopoly over the export market. Even more concerning for them was the fact that Pakistan could now leverage the JF-17 as a tool of diplomacy and strategic partnership, building long-term defense ties with buyers that might otherwise have turned to Western suppliers. Unlike deals tied to political conditions or strict operational restrictions, Pakistan's offers through the JF-17 were more flexible, allowing buyers to customize systems and weapons to their needs. This flexibility added to its appeal and increased its chances of penetrating markets traditionally dominated by the West. Western analysts understood that this was more than just an aircraft sale. It was the beginning of a shift in the global defense economy, where smaller nations could compete with powerful suppliers by providing affordable and effective solutions. The JF-17 became not just a jet, but a symbol of technological independence and strategic outreach, something that smaller nations could relate to and aspire toward. This rising export potential was a reminder that the balance of influence in the fighter jet market was no longer fixed in the hands of a few powerful nations, which is why the growing demand for the Thunder left Western defense experts both surprised and concerned. The JF-17 Thunder is not just a fighter jet for Pakistan, but a declaration of strategic independence. And this is what unsettled Western defense experts the most. For decades, Pakistan had been caught in a cycle of dependency on foreign suppliers, particularly Western powers, who used defense equipment as leverage to influence its foreign policy and military decisions. Access to upgrades, spare parts, or advanced weapons was often tied to conditions that limited Pakistan's operational freedom. The creation of the JF-17 broke that pattern by giving Pakistan a platform that it could control entirely, free from external restrictions or the threat of sanctions. Every block upgrade of the Thunder represented a step further in reducing reliance on others and strengthening Pakistan's domestic defense industry. This shift symbolized something deeper than just air power. It was about sovereignty and self-respect in global affairs. Western experts had long assumed that countries like Pakistan would remain dependent on buying their technology and therefore remain strategically vulnerable, but the JF-17 shattered that assumption. By producing its own frontline fighter, Pakistan proved that even nations outside the traditional circle of defense giants could take charge of their military future. This independence was reinforced by the collaborative structure of the program, where Pakistan had enough control to dictate design changes, weapons integration, and future upgrades according to its own needs, rather than foreign dictates. It also ensured that no country could hold Pakistan's defense hostage by cutting off supplies during a crisis. For the West, this development represented a loss of influence, because once a nation establishes self-reliance in defense, it becomes far harder to pressure or manipulate through arms dependency. The JF-17, therefore, became more than just a tool of war. It evolved into a symbol of resilience and defiance, showing that Pakistan could chart its own path and inspire other nations to pursue similar independence. In many ways, this is why the aircraft's success was so unsettling to Western defense circles, because it highlighted a future where technological autonomy was no longer the privilege of superpowers, but a possibility for nations willing to invest, collaborate, and believe in their own capabilities. The story of the JF-17 Thunder is not just about a jet, it is about defiance, ingenuity, and the courage to break free from dependency. It is about a nation that refused to accept limits placed on its sovereignty and instead engineered its own path toward independence. The West was surprised not because Pakistan built a fighter, but because Pakistan built a future, one that challenges monopolies, shifts power balances, and proves that strength does not always come with a billion-dollar price tag. The JF-17 is Pakistan's message to the world. We may not play by your rules, but we have written our own, and the sky is no longer yours alone, it is ours too.